DubFX.
How you doing, guys? Pretty good?
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm here to sort of tell you guys how I got to become who I am and what I do. I can't really tell you how to do something that you probably want to do. It might be something completely different to what I've done. I can only tell you about what I know. What I know is that I slaved in the beginning to try and become a commercial product. I wanted to be on the radio and on the TV. I wanted to be on MTV growing up. That's what I wanted. I wanted badly to be famous and rich and be all of that stuff. And then later on, as I kept on trying to create products with my music and to try and market myself to these labels, to try and be part of these record labels and to try and go on tour and play with all these amazing people, I realized how hard it really was and how much they didn't really give a shit. They were more interested and concerned in finding people that they could pretty much manipulate to do exactly what they want. They want to find someone who's ridiculously good looking, who's got a nice voice, and then they can just say, sing that, wear that, and that's what you're going to do. And at first I thought, yeah, I'm cool with that. As long as I make loads of money and I get loads of chicks, it's all good, right? But as I grew up and I started to get more sort of, I guess, interested in the art of music, I realized that that's not going to happen. I have to make it myself in some way or another. So I played in as many different bands as I could and got like the biggest, broadest picture of music as I, well, the music that I enjoyed anyway. I tried to fill my brain with as much as I could. So I was jamming with a heavy metal band for like 7 years, from when I left school till I was like 23 years old. At the same time, I was also jamming with jazz musicians, and which was completely the opposite world, because in the metal world, everything's about sections and 16 bars of this, 16 bars of that, and then going to this, and then there's that, and then this, and back to that again. And whereas in the jazz world, trying to get any jazz musician to repeat the same thing twice is pretty much impossible, if they're good at what they do, obviously. So yeah, having that completely different, that polar opposite effect just kind of filled my brain with new ideas. And around the same time I got involved, I started going down to raves and checking out dance music and seeing that scene. And so I was in hip-hop bands, I was in reggae bands, I was in funk bands, I was jamming with DJs. I just immersed myself as much as I could growing up from basically 17 to 23 years old. Got as many gigs as I could and thought that one day I'll become this commercial product that I could sort of market myself to the world. And then it kind of hit me with a ton of bricks that, you know, wasn't going to happen, like I said before. So what I did was I decided, rather than waiting around for the opportunities to come to me, I felt like I'd sort of paid my dues musically, like I'd experimented enough. I'd already been playing around with an effects pedal just like this one. It was the GT6, 2 models below it, and that's what I was playing in the bands. I thought, I'm not a great singer, but these bands on, like, I went and saw these bands, I heard their albums and they were awesome, and then I go and see them the live show, and it wasn't, some of them weren't as good. I realized the singers weren't as great as they were live, as they were on albums sometimes. And I was like, why is that? It's because on the records, they got producers, they got effects, they got compression, reverb, they got all these things that make their voice sound good. And I was like, I can make myself sound better. I don't need to be that good at singing. So what I did was I bought a pedal, which originally I bought for guitar, because I'm like, I can't play guitar very well, so I call them talent boxes. So I started playing with that, and then I started putting a microphone in. Obviously the first time I did it, it didn't come out sounded very good. There was lots of feedback and noise, and the guys in the band, Cade was in that band, just over there, he's my manager now. He was like, turn that shit off. I never plug that in again. And well, I didn't listen to him, obviously. I kept doing it, which is good thing. And I learned how to basically put effects over my voice and how to make my voice sound the way I wanted it to sound in my head, the way I heard it, how to do it live. And so by adding delays and reverbs and compression and things like that, I learned basically how to sound like I'm in a studio. So doing that through all the different bands gave me a broad understanding of my place in the mix, how I should sound. I'm just going to turn that down a little bit. Is that all right if I don't use the mic?
Yeah.
That was great. So yeah, so learning how to put myself in the mix, that's sort of my big thing about jazz musicians. Anyone who learns jazz learns that depending on the musicians you're with and depending on the room you're playing in, your playing style changes. You adapt to your surroundings. Because you're not there, you don't just rock up and say, this is what I know and I'm going to play that, which is what we did in the metal band. And obviously sometimes you're in a tiny room and the PA doesn't sound very good and you sound like shit. So with jazz musicians, you know, you get in there and you just set up, the room sounds a certain way, I'm going to play in this style too, because you're just constantly aware of the acoustics and your place in the mix. And so this pedal had a lot to do with me understanding that and how I can take things to the next level. Later on, I saw this guy using a loop station, this guy called Mal Webb, an Australian vocalist. He's a freak of nature, this guy. He can make the weirdest noises with his mouth, things that I don't believe are actually humanly possible. But he does it, so they are. But anyway, I saw him doing, it was just like no effects, just a loop station and his microphone. And he built up these ridiculous soundscapes and sounds, and he was beatboxing, he was looping, and he was putting these sounds into these bass lines, and it was just really freaky to see someone actually do that. These sounds come out of their face and into the microphone and be looped, and it's so transparent as well. You watch him and you see him make this sound, and then it comes back and it loop, and I was just infatuated with this concept. And I remember thinking, man, I've got this effects pedal which can do all these other things that, you know, he can't do. I can't do the things he can do, but I can do these other things. What if I just take the concept of the loop station, and I could beatbox a little bit as well. I learned that during school. And I thought, maybe I could just kind of do this thing. And kind of, I had this idea in my brain, this concept. And every day at school, I remember drawing a picture of what I wanted my live busking setup to be. Because I knew I was going to be a street performer as well. I had this in my, since I was like 14, watching street performers, doing magic shows, doing mime stuff, whatever. I always wanted to do it. So I used to write in my little journal like the setup and what I was going to do and how I was just constantly crafting in my brain, manifesting the situation, constantly thinking about it. And then when I hit about 23, and the band, I recorded an album with this band, the metal band, and that looked like it was going to go places, and I felt like I wanted to go to Europe and shop that around, and at the same time travel around and street perform to sort of pay my way, just so I could move around Europe, get a scope for the scene, and see maybe where we could launch this band, because we had this product that we'd been preparing. Even though I was already sort of coming to terms with the fact that it might not actually happen, I still had this kind of dream to make it happen with these guys, because we spent so long making music together. So I went to Europe and I bought this whole system, this idea that I wanted, that I've been drawing in my notebook the whole time. It was like a little gel battery. So the reason you get a gel battery, a 12-volt gel battery, is because car batteries, although they can provide power, they provide a lot of power really quickly. Great for starting an engine, but not great if you want to power a sound system. So gel batteries are much better for that. They release slow amounts of energy, but at the same sort of wattage. So I have a 110 amp hour gel battery, 12 volts, with an inverter plugged in. And then the plug-in, the inverter is what converts 12 volts to 110, in your case 220 in Europe. So I just you have to count up all the different things. So this is about 60 watts. The sound system here looks to me would be around about, I don't know, maybe the subs are about 200 and those are probably about 60, so 320 or 350, so about 400, 500 watts, and you could have this whole setup on the street with an inverter. A 500 watt inverter is probably about 60 bucks.
Running off one battery.
Running off one battery.
How many hours did you get?
It depends how much amp power you've got in the battery. So if you've got 110 amp hour, which is the one I used, about 6, 7, I used to have an 800 watt inverter and 110 amp hour, and that would last about 4 hours. But the louder you go, the more it's going to drain. The quieter you go, the less it drains, so you can go longer. So basically the old trick is when you run out of power, you just turn it down a little bit and you keep going. Or if you feel really tired and the battery doesn't seem to be running out, you just crank it. And either the cops shut you down or you run out of power. Either way, it's ended. So anyway, so I did that. I bought a van, and I met my lady, the Flower Fairy, and Kate also came and joined me for a bit of the leg, as did a few other friends. And basically we just went out and we street performed in as many major cities around Europe as we could with this little setup. I mean, I was making the music, those guys were looking after me and selling my CDs. And you wouldn't believe how much money you can make street performing. Like, people still freak out when I tell them today. It's not about the money in the hat. That's sort of like, you know, chump change. You can make, okay, you can make a good $60, $70 in a few hours, which is, you know, pretty good compared to like a normal desk job, right? You're just sitting there asking for money, playing a song or whatever like that. Beggars make even more money actually, which is bad. Selling CDs on the other hand, we basically lived in this van, we had all our equipment in there, had a solar panel on the roof, and we had this CD stacker which could stack 6 CDs and burn 6 CDs at once. And we would just sit there and play cards and, you know, have a smoke, whatever, and make some food or whatever, and just burn hundreds of CDs every day, and we would put them and write down, it was back then it was MySpace, right? So we put the MySpace address, email address, phone number in case they wanted to book us on these burnt CDs, and we'd just go out, hit the streets and sell roughly, an all right day would have been 50 CDs in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's an all right day. And then on amazing days, 150 CDs. Selling for $10 each, you do the math. It's, we were banking quite a lot. We didn't save really any of it, actually. That was the way we decided to do it. We thought, like, we're here to travel, we're here to have a great time. We don't want to just miss out on all the cool things. Like, we want to go and see the Madame Tussauds thing in Amsterdam, or we want to go and see that Van Gogh museum, and we want to go and eat at that awesome gastronomy restaurant, and we didn't hold back. We just spent every penny that we made. But at the same time, luckily, because I'd spent so long crafting my ideas and my music and my sound before I started street performing, and when I started street performing, I was practicing on the move, under pressure, to people who were there, and they were instantly giving me feedback right there and then. If they didn't like it, they walked away. If they liked it, they bought a CD. And rather than trying to make myself a product for a record label, I learned what was connecting myself to the people who actually are the ones who are going to buy a CD in the first place. And learning what they enjoy is one of the most important things, I think. I mean, you're not a slave to what they believe. You still got to do what you like, but you can do what you like and work out what everybody likes at the same time. And that's kind of been my journey this entire time. And I'm still learning what I can do and what I can't do and how to make things good. So yeah, we would basically just travel around, go from city to city, and just street perform as much as we could until we got kicked out, or until we rinsed it and there was no one else left to buy a CD. And I remember the first year that we did that, I calculated that I sold 25,000 CDs in the summer. And I was like, man, that's more than a lot of labels like are selling for independent bands and for bands that are getting put out there. And that was in rainy conditions sometimes. It was like, it was pretty tough. It was really tough actually. But the first year I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I went back to Australia because you can't obviously street perform in winter in Europe because it snows and shit. So went back to Australia and I bought it. I sold all my equipment, went back to Australia, bought a new van and bought the same equipment again, or I upgraded some of my stuff and toured up the coast of Australia and did that. And again, sold like a good 15,000 CDs or so around that summer. Came back to Europe armed with even more tunes, with better ideas, more sounds. I'd learned, or after a year of doing that, I learned what is it that stops a crowd. And I can tell you straight away, I can break it down pretty easily. Like if you want to have a hit tune, not necessarily a hit tune, but you want to have a way of making people listen to what you've got to say. I think there are about 3 or 4 elements that are necessities in your music. The first one is everybody likes a nice fat drum break. Right? We're at a generation point. I mean, you don't have to have that in your music, but when you're walking down the street and you hear someone strumming like on a guitar singing Oasis over there, or some dude doing a fat hip hop break, you're gonna go listen to that, right? Most of the time. I mean, it's something new and different on the street. So a big fat heavy break people like. People really like bass frequencies. That's something that people, especially in the UK, people respond to loads. So a big fat bass line, a melodic bass line, something really nice. People also want to hear conscious lyrics.
Yeah.
It's one thing. It's one thing to be on MTV and talking about how many bitches you've got, but when you're out in the street and you haven't got any bitches with you, it doesn't work. On the MTV, you can prove that you've got it all because they're all hanging out. It's not the same thing. Exactly, and everyone knows it's all bullshit. So it's like you've got to just talk about what makes sense to you, and that's all I've ever done. Is I don't know how to make my lyrics all like metaphorical and shit. I don't really do that sort of stuff. I've never been good at it. I'm not very good at articulating my words in general, actually. So when it comes to writing lyrics, I just write simple things, and as long as you say them with heart and you sing with conviction, that's the only thing that really is going to stop people and make them want to listen to you. I wrote the song that's kind of blown up for me, which has kind of made me popular, is a song called Love Someone.
Love Someone.
And that one there, I wrote it on guitar and I sung it to that band, the metal band, and they said it gave gayest piece of shit. He was like, don't ever sing that again. And I'm like, why? And like, you can't be singing about that shit. I'm like, why? And they're like, because I was there on Saturday night when you stuck a $10 bill up your ass. I'm like, you haven't got that in. I used to do that kind of dumb shit. I was a dickhead, obviously. So. Sorry, I don't mean it in that disrespect. Absolutely no. You're right. Sorry. Anyway.
He was saying it in context, though. It was what he's being called. He wasn't actually saying it.
Amen.
Yeah, but I did use the word, so
yes.
yeah, I apologize. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. I learned very quickly when I started street performing that singing with heart and with conviction is the only way to turn people's heads. And I truly do believe the lyrics that I was saying when I sang Love Someone the first time, when they told me it was bad. But I wasn't singing it with the same conviction as I did when I was on the street, when I was really struggling. I was living in a van and I was going back to my van by myself or with my lady or whatever. And we would cook our little meal and then go out the next day in the cold and set up our equipment and just do it and live it. And all of a sudden the lyrics that I'd written before started having more meaning to me. And that's when I sang them, the more emphasis and the more meaning I put into these lyrics when I sang them, the more people bought the CDs. And they wanted to hear that song, they wanted to have it on their CD player. And then after 3 years of learning this and just putting as much effort into my music in that moment as I could, someone in England came up to me and said, I want to film you, as did many other people came up and said that as well. And I was a bit like, yeah, cool, whatever, come down, bring your camera, I'll just record it, as I always did. And this one particular day, I sang a song, he filmed it. I remember the day when he filmed Love Someone on the street. I was actually a little bit annoyed that he was there because people were thinking that I was there to film a video. So people weren't stopping to watch and to buy my CD. So I'm like, man, I need to sell some CDs. That was how I made my money, right? That's how so I was just like, God, I wish he would just leave. Anyway, so he filmed, so there was that kind of energy was in there as well, kind of weird. And did the song, I did the day, and I didn't hear back from him for about 2 weeks. And then he calls me back and he's like, oh, have you got the recording from that day? And no other video that had ever gone on YouTube with my music had the audio straight out of the pedals. It was always just from someone's camera phone. Yeah. And that stuff doesn't really go viral. It doesn't sound very good. You can show it to a few people, it's like, yeah, it sounds kind of cool, I want to see it live. Anyway, I mastered the audio track. I didn't change anything. I just took the audio, I mastered it, made it a little bit fatter, and just gave it to him. He stuck it on. And within a week, it went up to like 5,000 views, which I was kind of impressed with at the time. It's still kind of all right to get that many views, but I didn't think much of it. What I realized had happened was all these people over the 3 years before that had bought my CD. They were waiting for something else to pop up because they'd seen me on the street, they'd connected with me. I'd sold them my music there and then. They connected with me and I spoke to them and they enjoyed the music and they went away and they've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden this video pops up. Oh, that's that dude I saw. And they showed as many people as they could, and it just grew and grew and grew, and it just sort of, the groundwork that I'd spent on the street came together. If I had have just released that video without doing all that groundwork, I don't believe I'd be standing here talking to you guys right now. It wouldn't have happened that way. What did happen, which was crazy, was somehow out of that energy that was happening on YouTube and Facebook and all the sharing and the commenting, somehow it happens in the Ukraine, in Eastern Europe, right? A place I'd never thought I'd ever go to. I'd never even I sort of knew about it. I get this email, hey, I'd love you to come to do a show. We've got this club. We can pay 300 euro. I'm like, I'll do that. I'll go to Ukraine for 300 euro. Like, I mean, promoters in England were offering me 100 pounds to do a show. I was making 1,000 on the streets. I always said no. I kind of said to myself, if they can offer me as much as I'd make in the street, then I'll come and do your show. Otherwise, screw you. It's like, I'd go to the nights and have fun, but I'm not going to go and sweat on stage and go hard and just ruin my voice so that the next day I can't go on street perform on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in the street to all these people that are actually my audience anyway. So I get flown to Ukraine to do this show, and it was the craziest experience of my life because every single person in that club, the promoter, what he did was he took my video and he sent it through his channel of Ukrainian dance culture people. And the people over there are so in tune with social networking. You've got no idea. Like, Western world here, Australia, America, we are so spoon-fed by the media, the mass media, that we don't really, we're so desensitized to looking for things ourselves. Like, we think we do, oh yeah, I like my underground bands. No, you don't realize what it's like. In Eastern Europe, they've been bootlegging since the USSR days. They you know, like, it's been, yeah, it's in their culture to try and find things. So as soon as the internet exploded there, like, the kids are so savvy. They know what they like, they know what they're looking for, they know somehow where to find it. Anyway, this promoter put my music on this channel, and it just kind of exploded in the Ukraine. And I literally went from having 5,000 views to 15,000 views in a couple of days. And it was all, I looked up on YouTube, it was all in the Ukraine. So I get to the Ukraine, and it's like Elvis is in the building. And I'm going from a street performing and, like, you know, selling CDs like casually on the street, to walking up to the first ever show where it was just DubFX on the bill, and a room this big, packed, of people singing along to my music was just the most incredible experience I remember having at that time, especially. Even now, I mean, it was the first time that really happened to me. And I was like, wow, something's really actually going to happen now. I feel like I'm on this electrical vibe that's just taking me somewhere. I just felt it. I could see where it could happen, where it could go if I just stuck at it and I just keep doing what I was doing. And so that became, from that moment on, it was my mission. It was like, all right, I'm only going to sing conscious lyrics about positive things. I'm only going to project conscious, good vibes. I'm going to keep making fat, heavy breaks with fat, heavy bass lines. And people really respond to the organicness and vibe that I create with all this looping and stuff. But at the end of the day, the technology, it's not really about the technology. It's about putting the soul into it, which is what I'm trying to really express, you know, putting your soul into it. I just happen to have a cool gimmick with all these pedals and things that kind of make it a little bit more interesting compared to the next guy. So yeah, after that, is that sort of, from Ukraine, it kind of blew up all around Eastern Europe, Russia, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Czech Republic. That's actually my biggest market in the whole world, is Eastern Europe. You know, in Australia, I don't pull more than 500-600 people to a show. You know, I just played a festival. Well, we just did huge festivals over in the UK. I can pull about 2,000 people to a show in Hungary by myself on the bill. So yeah, that's it. That's, you know, it's all about finding your market and going and just exploiting it, but in the positive way that you can. You know what I mean? And that's sort of what I've been doing. I'm always trying to come up with new ways of how to take my music to the next level, like trying to break it in America and all that stuff. But every time we try, it's almost like we're taking a step back, because you got to let it happen organically, and it's all about the people. Let the people spread your music. When someone comes up to you and says, you've got to hear this band, you've got to listen to what they're saying, as opposed to when TV tells you, listen to this band, because we're so desensitized. So I'm just letting it come. I'm taking it as it comes. I take every opportunity as I can to speak to people like yourselves and to try and connect with as many people, because that's where I truly believe, you know, the seeds are planted and all of that stuff. So if you want, I can make a little bit of music and show you guys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my pedals, actual pedals, are in Toronto Airport. Thank you,
Oh.
Yeah. It's been like 5 days now that I haven't had in my suitcase all my pedals. So
They're the best for that.
yeah, they are, aren't they?
For now.
They're really good at it. So these are my pedals, so it's kind of a bit sketchy. I've kind of had to reprogram them all really badly, and so it's not going to sound the way it normally would. And and another thing also I should say, if anyone out there thinking of being a street performer in any way, good work, yeah. Okay, well, awesome. Street performing is the best way to get good at what you do. Because like I said earlier, like, I'd learned all this stuff about music, and I knew what I wanted to do and what I was capable of. But, you know, when you go out street performing, it really chisels the fat and it takes away, it cuts you down to what your raw essence is. And that's what street performing did for me. One of the main things I see a lot of people do is they rock up to these venues and they're going to have their show, they're going to put on their band and they're going to do this show for the people, and they rock up with like shitloads of gear, just way too much gear, like it's to fit on stage. And I always think to myself, would you take that into the street? Would you go street performing with that amount of gear? No, you wouldn't. So it's all about streamlining. Do as little as you can to get the biggest sound possible. this is a really crap example because look at all the leads everywhere. This is not how I normally would street perform. All my stuff is set up, ready to go. So literally, I just open my bag, I put down this thing, everything's plugged in. I literally take a lead, plug into the sound system, and another lead to plug into power, and I'm ready to go. I can set it up in under a minute, and I can be ready to go. Yeah. It's just being clever about it, you know what I'm saying? And so I think everyone should do that, especially on tour. Has anyone heard of Beardy Man?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that guy. He's amazing at what he does. He carries way too much gear. I was having a chat with him, and he was saying to me, yeah, like we were talking about like the cost of, you know, touring around. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, that's like all the excess baggage and all this and all that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he carries like 120 kilograms of gear alone when he goes and does his shows. I've got 2 bags which are 20 kilos each. One of them I put under my name, one under Kay's name, and that's it. We just under the baggage weight, and we rock up to a venue. We can plug it in within a minute and a half and smash it. So anyway, that's the thing you should really think about, making it streamlined and as good as you can. All right, so I want to say a couple of things as well before I start. Beatboxing is not my greatest skill. I know how to make you think I'm good at beatboxing. I think that's what all the musicians all about, is making you believe that you're way better than you really are. Illusion, the artistry of it. I truly believe that. So when I was learning the beatbox at school, we used to go like, I used to go, which developed to like, now, if you beatbox that loud into a microphone, it sounds terrible. Because the amount of air that you're pushing, I'm pushing through my lips to go into that microphone, it sounds great live, acoustically, but when you go into a microphone, it just sounds like... So I had to learn how to make my beatbox sound like that, but through a microphone into the pedals. So using EQ and compression and reverb, I managed to sculpt out all the frequencies, the air frequency that make your beatboxing sound really muddled and confused. If your beatbox is around 500 hertz, if you take 500 hertz out of the mix of a kick drum generally, that'll open up loads of room for the bass to sit and the vocals to sit. It's an old technique, and I started doing it with my beatboxing, and it makes it sound way better. So if I take the EQ off, listen to this. Sounds kind of crap, right? Yeah, and then turn the EQ on. It's still not the greatest example, but yeah, anyway. So there, beatboxing is all about cheating. So what I do, I'm gonna make a loop now. What I do is I'm gonna make a beat. The first thing I always make is the beat, because if I start with something else and then have to make the beat around that, you can easily train wreck. I do it sometimes, and I know other beatboxers do it perfect every time, but my focus when I perform live is to make people dance and to make people groove and sit in it. So I'm not trying to impress them with all my tricks and all the crazy sounds that I can do. Although I can do loads of crazy sounds with these effects, I just want people to dance and just feel the music. So the first thing I do is a beat as quick as I can, like this. So now on the other channel, I've recorded the hi-hats. Now music is all about elements as well, right? So when I make my music, I always have my beat that's punching through the middle and the kick and the snare coming through. I also like to have some layer up the top, some harmony, so that when you take it away, there's a gap in the music, and then when you bring it back in, it sounds full again. So I do that by using loads of reverbs and chorus and delays and making this sound. Right, so there's my pad up the top. It's always going to be there. Now to get a bass line, there's a couple of different bass sounds that I use. One is just a normal sine wave, which sounds like this. Or I can also do another one, which is an octave on my voice to make it sound like this. Alright, and then to get one more layer to the bass so that I can actually fill it out even more, I'll use a synth like this. Right, so now all my elements are there. I can now just have fun with the music. So I kind of picture it in my mind that I've got a drummer, I've got a keyboard player, I've got a bass player, I've got two bass players kind of thing. And then I can just and I've got my voice as well, which is actually what the whole performance is about. Because I can make what I just made then in under a minute. It's not about what I've just made, it's about the conviction and the lyrics and the things that I put over the top. And a lot of beatboxers and performers don't realize that. They emphasize too much on the tricks and they're trying to show you, look what I just did. But it's just a loop. It's never gonna not be a loop. It's always gonna be that same loop over and over again. So you need to sing over the top. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message, it won't confuse you. Open your heart now, let it lose you. Music that moves you, music that grooves you. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message, it won't confuse you. Open your heart now, and let it lose you. Music that moves you, music that grooves you. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message, it won't confuse you. Open your heart now, let it lose you. That music that moves you, music that grooves you. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message.
So as I'm feeling the rhythm on my lips, get a fix of the mix, move hips through the licks of the funky beatbox kicks. Blizzes my brain, shot at the gate as I'm gonna bring a new groove to the soul train.
Let me take you back in time to the old school. Remember the days, smoking spliffs every day, coming up in new ways. I found a place before school. Now I'm just another fool trying to survive on my 9 to 5.
I realize a dream with my own eyes. I'll be taking the industry by surprise. Redefine lives inside my mind, trying to find a way alive. Cause I'll be ripping up and living up and giving it off on my own emotion. You hear me crashing on the earth like the ocean. My poetry's like the magic in the potion. Your energy's 1 degree in my devotion. Yo, I want some hip hop and just don't stop. Bring it on the rhythm, the bass won't drop. Fever on the floor will make your body rock. The funk won't stop. Let's take it to the top.
Come on, I want some hip hop and just don't stop. Bring it on the rhythm of the bass won't drop. Fever on that floor will make your body rock. The funk won't stop. Hey, I like music that moves you, music that grooves you. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message, it won't confuse you. Open your heart now and let it lose you. Music that moves you, music that grooves you. Close your eyes, I wanna lose you. Here is a message, it won't confuse you. Open your heart.
Cheers. I mean, that's just messing around, you know what I mean? A lot of the time, what I do is I write a song on acoustic guitar first. That's how a lot of my tunes have been written, actually. And when I'm kind of happy with it, and I think, yeah, that sounds good, but it just sounds folky, or it just sounds like something that's been done 100 times. I take the idea and the concept, the lyrics and the melodies, and I sort of go in here and I just sort of mess around, you know what I mean? I think that's what music should always be about, having fun and just experimenting. And yeah, I've told you all my secrets, I think. Is there any questions anyone wants to ask about what I do, how I do it?
How much all that shit cost roughly? I'm about to go get that right now, dude.
Yeah, well, when I started, I had the GT6, which you can get for about $150. And then I had the Akai head rush pedal, which is a loop station which only has one loop you can do on there. So you make the first loop, and the first loop that you record, it stores that separately, and then you can build as many loops as you want on top of that, and just go as chaotic as you like, and then wipe it back to the very first loop. So what I used to do is when I'd go out for hours on the street, and the thing about that, because when you perform with a band, jazz bands especially, it's all about chords and doing different things and harmonies over different chords and moving things around. When you're stuck with one loop, you know, it's all just, you just got to find it one note. You can just learn how to groove over one note, and you can groove over any note, you know what I mean? So I'd make a beat. The first thing I do is I just make a beat, and then I would make a bass line over that beat, and sing and rap, and then just build it up with my voice, and then slowly add another loop, add a harmony, and then kind of sing and dance, or like beatbox around that, so rap and sing around that, not dance. And then slowly build things up, and to the point where it was just too much, there was not enough space anymore, and then I could literally wipe everything back to the original beat and start a new bass line in a completely new key. So I would show like 10 minutes, like I'd do like a hip hop beat, and spend like 35, 40 minutes on a hip hop beat, going through as many different keys and as different ideas as I could just around that one beat, and just trying to be as creative as I could. And then once I'm sick of that hip hop beat, then I'd switch it up, do a reggae beat, or do a dubstep beat, or do a drum and bass beat, and I'll just be able to do like hours and hours of just entertaining myself, basically, on the street. And that's what people kind of really connected to. So yeah, so the original setup, coming back to your question, would have cost me about $300 all up. Over time, as I made more money on the street and I wanted to explore more possibilities, I got to the sort of the highest level of what you can get. This, I think, this has just come out. I think they're about $400 or $500, and these are about $400 or $500.
Show it to us.
Sorry, yeah, this is the RC505, the new loop station by Boss Roland. Yeah, no, they're really good to me. They give me new stuff all the time, actually, nowadays, because they realise that I've got more hits on their videos than they have. And using their equipment. So yeah, this is the new loop station. It's pretty sweet. You've got 5 loops you can run, but you have to use your fingers. You can't use it with your feet, which is kind of annoying if you're a guitarist, or you know what I mean. But I kind of enjoy it. I'm so sick of doing everything with my feet. Although I got really good at it, and I sort of dancing about and sort of can make it all happen. I just got so bored after like 6 years of doing the same thing. So now it's wicked. I get to play out new things. So yeah, so that's it's about $1,000 altogether for this stuff.
I've got a 2-part question. I wanted to hear you elaborate a little more on the 500 hertz and that trick of opening up space in the drum beat. And I also wanted to hear your thoughts on, have you seen that TED Talk with Imogen E?
I haven't seen that one.
She's got a TED Talk, and she's built all this gear, and she runs it off of one of those new PlayStations. And it's like where she steps in the stage.
I've heard about
She goes into
this.
different. You should
And
really
you
look
do
at
different things with the sound and.
yeah, so I'd really like to
Oh,
see
yeah,
perhaps with some custom gear where you're literally just moving, and where you move in the grid changes what sort of soundscape you enter. It's really fascinating next level stuff. So
It is.
Twister.
But I'd really like to hear your
so
thoughts on 500 hertz and that opening that space inside the drum and inside the beat.
Well, is anyone here doing music production courses and things like that? Or just production in general at home? Yeah, people, this guy. Well, if you know anyone who does that stuff realizes that when you record music, which is what I'm essentially doing on the fly, it's like it's 5-channel sort of recording thing. When you're recording music, it's all about space, and EQing is the first thing that they had back in the day in order to create that space. When they started, they only had 2 frequency bands they could choose. But 525 hertz was the very center, and that's where either they would boost it, or they would bring it down, or they would boost it and bring it down, and so that we kind of got that, or depending on that's all they had with sound back in the day when they first started, and then they started learning how to cut things off. In fact, the Jamaicans, King Tubby, had a lot of influence over that stuff, and he would buy things like reverb units and then open them up and change them around and add extra EQ thing. He was a proper nutter, that guy.
Lee
and
Perry too.
Lee Perry as well, definitely. King Tubby was more than it, like a scientist geek.
Tinkerer.
Sorry?
Tinkerer.
Yeah, Tinkerer, yeah, exactly. So, you know, EQing is like the most important thing about recording music. Otherwise, everything kind of, unless you've got amazing musicians who already know how to make their, like they can get together in a room and they can change the way that they play their instrument to suit the frequencies of all the other people in the band. That's a real jazz thing. There's a lot of jazz musicians who are really good at that. They can just sound great in any combination, any situation. Then you just put a bunch of mics in front of them and it just sounds amazing. But if you're doing something heavier and fatter, or you're trying to do something new and different, and you just want to experiment, then EQ and compression and reverb is the most important thing. So for beatboxing, my EQ chain, the way my EQ looks on my beatbox channel.
So just to be naive, what is EQ? Is it an equalizer? Or?
Equalizer, yeah, sorry. So frequencies, you got all your frequencies, you got the bottom, well, from your direction, bottom end down here, and the top end up here. The lowest frequency we can hear is 20 hertz, around about 20,000 is the highest frequency we can hear. Animals can hear higher.
Can you play music on your speakers lower than the audible human ear frequency, and does it affect people?
There's no point because speakers can't recreate the frequencies below 20 hertz usually. This sound system probably can't even go below 30 really.
Is it possible?
Yeah, okay, so it all comes down to this like, if you want to go in there, I can to explain. Well, basically, also the way speakers represent pull-out frequencies is the different speeds at which a speaker can move can create different frequencies. So, of the higher the frequency, the much faster a speaker has to move, which is why tweeters are really small and why little headphones sound really tinny and crap, is because they can only go so fast. Whereas a big sub is big because it's got a big thing that's got to move slowly and pulse to the music. They've made speakers, to answer your question, that go below 20 hertz. There's one that goes down to like 17 or 18. It's like the Valve sound system in the UK. They're proper sound boys.
Oh.
And they made it. They've actually had to, because they're called drivers, right? The speaker is called a driver. They've actually had to mechanically create a engine that pushes the speaker so that it can go slow enough and equal enough to create a low enough frequency. And it can go so low, basically, that you can actually shit yourself. Pretty crazy. The brown note is like 12 hertz, I think. So anyway, but when you get, I've heard the Valve sound system, and it didn't make me poo myself, no. But I did. There was this one thing where they dropped the DJ just dropped everything, and all of a sudden I couldn't hear any music, but I could just feel it. That's all. It was just my chest was pounding. And I'm just like, wow. But at the end of the day, it's just a party trick, really. I mean, it's not about, music's not about tricks. It's about just performance and giving the best possible performance. So, to answer your question, 500 hertz is just something that works for me.
Yes.
Other beatboxers, when I do that, take that frequency out of them, they're so good at beatboxing and sounding great when they just get a normal crappy sound system or whatever, just in a club, anywhere, and they just get a mic and they can just sound like an old break, a funk break, or they can do the bass, and I can't do that stuff. I've never been able to do that stuff. That was never my goal, was to be able to do that. So when I take that frequency out of them, it doesn't work. I do it, but they making all the elements at once in their sound. I just want to make a kick, a hi-hat, and a snare. And in order to make that sound as punchy and as clean and clear as possible, I got to take out certain frequencies. So I roll off the top end so that there's not really glassy top end coming through, because hats don't really have that much top end in them anyway, hi-hats. And mid-range, so that between the kick and the snare drum, there's a little bit of a gap, and that's where your voice, like around 500 hertz, is where your voice generally sounds warm and nice, and also the bass frequencies want to sit between 500 down to about 200. So, I mean, as you can tell, I'm a huge geek when it comes to like production. That's my thing. That's actually more so than I would calling myself a singer. I reckon I'm more of a producer, actually, which is what I do live at the moment. I just learn how to make it look like this.
On that tip, what do you use in the studio?
What do I use in the studio? I use Cubase. That's my program of choice. I know Ableton is like a huge one. A lot of people love that. I grew up with Cubase and I'm good at it.
On the Atari or?
On Atari. No, bro. I'm not that old, thank you. But yeah, no, I just got a laptop, a MacBook Pro, and I just run Cubase on that. And I plug my pedal into that. I've got a bunch of outboard gear. I've got some really nice outboard compressors and a tube vitalizer. I've got a summing mixer. So yeah, but for me, like the thing about recording music, and this is the thing a lot of people, I got sucked into this game, is people, they get so reliant on their tricks and on their equipment and on plugins. When you're a producer, like you can get the latest compressor and the latest EQ and the latest this and that and make it try and sound like really good, but really actually the best performance is all that really matters, because no matter how much EQ and compression you slap on a performance, it's the performance that it resonates with the people anyway. And the more you cover that up, the crap it's going to sound. And that's what I did for a lot of my albums to begin with, was I was trying too hard to put too many sounds in and not leave any space and squeeze every little sound I could put into every little bit of the music of the song. Everything's just full. And now when I listen back to my records, I can't listen to them because it's like there's no space and there's no soul for me. But other people might like that. Anyway, yeah.
What's the most important musical skill to making good music?
Most important musical skill?
Yeah.
No ego. Yeah, that's the one thing that I know, because I know guys that have got way better voices than me. They sing better than me. They write better music. They can rap better than me. Their albums are better than mine. But they've got the worst ego complexes, and they're broke. They are, really.
Broke, yeah.
Proper broke, like in every possible meaning of that word. So nothing comes of that stuff. But on a literal more term, I don't know, man. I just think practicing and being open-minded and flexible is the best thing you can do. But if I went out in the street and street performed and just thought, this is what I'm going to do, if you don't like it, then screw you, I'm just keep on it, then I wouldn't be here right now. You know, when I was in Italy, Italians love reggae music. They love melodic reggae music. So I just did loads of reggae when I was in Italy. When I got to the UK, they're beyond that. The reggae, you know, some white kid playing reggae, there's heaps of Jamaicans there that play it way better already. Caribbean community in the UK is huge. So it's like, I was like, okay, well, that's my sound, that's where I started, but I was listening to what was coming out of the cars when I was walking down the street. I was listening to grime and jungle and drum and bass and dubstep, and these sounds I'd never even heard before I got to the UK. So I just immersed myself in that world and just sort of learned as much as I could. The first day I went street performing in Manchester, I set my gear up and I started making a beat, and this kid stops going, nah, man. What? He's like, play the other beat you're playing before. I'm like, what? He's like, no, the one you're doing before. I'm like, and I made the beat again. He's like, yeah, cool. Now make a bass. It's like, wah. No kidding. It's actually happened. This little Jamaican kid like this. I'm just like, you do it. And he's like, okay. And he grabs it. He's like, wah. And I looped it. And then he started looping. And then he just looks at me and he just started freestyling. And like, it was awesome. And I was just like, and all of a sudden a crowd of people started like gathering. And I was like, okay. And the next thing, this other kid comes like, can I jump on the mic? I'm like, yeah. And he grabs it and he starts going, yeah. Super fast. And I'm just like, okay, everyone can MC in this country. And literally I'd be like, and there was a queue, literally. It's like in Manchester especially. Like, I remember at one point looking at my mic, and there was just hands down the chord, waiting. And like as soon as one guy would finish rapping, he'd let go, and then someone else. I just spent hours on the street. I just sat there, just like playing with my pedals, watching and just like listening. I mean, I know other people who would have been scared by the thing and like, oh, they're gonna take my gear, no, turn it off. But I was just like, let's do it. Let's have a party. You know what I mean? And every day I went out there and I learned off these kids, and just they taught me everything about what I know now. You know, so that's all about being flexible and learning as much as you can from your surroundings.
And having no ego because you're not all upset by being good with their
No ego.
Yeah.
You're just
one skill.
like setting the.
You go, you shine.
Make a note of that.
Exactly. It's just open. I mean, you're in the street. You've put yourself in the position to have your shit like stolen off you. You know, you got to expect that that's going to happen. So as long as you have an open heart and a more, like, you know, a positive vibe about you, then.
How many times have you stolen from?
My stuff been stolen. I've never had my gear stolen off me. I've had jumpers and sunglasses and things that I've left around my gear stolen off me.
Except for Air Canada.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Borrowed.
Every time I try to learn about production, I always wind up, I find myself staring at the page about hertz or frequencies, my eyes just melting from jargon. Where would you recommend starting to learn about production? It's so accessible, I can't.
Well, you won't learn anything until you do it, right? So just playing with it and fiddling about. I mean, when I started, I was like you, I had no idea. And all these frequencies and like, what? But then the more I did it and the more I applied what I would learn into, I read a lot of magazines like Future Music, SOS. Every airplane I buy 3 of those magazines and I go scan through them and I read up on gear and I learn about what that gear does. Even if they're talking about a thing you can do in Logic or in Ableton, I'll read that article because I might learn something that I can apply to Cubase. So I'm constantly just immersing myself in that world. But it just comes with time, like anything. You keep just playing around with it and you get better.
Nice.
Yep.
What's some of the new stuff you're experimenting with, maybe genre-wise or new weird sounds?
New weird sounds. I am stuck in the 90s, bro. Like, I think that was like my favorite sort of era for kind of dance culture, and just the best hip hop was in the 90s. The best drum and bass and jungle was in the 90s. Maybe not like reggae and stuff, but that was just, it was so much soul, even grunge and rock and all of that was killing it back then. These days everything's just kind of all about how to just make a product, and it's not about the artistry anymore. So as far as new sounds and stuff goes, I kind of draw influences from the past all the time. I'm all about nostalgia. Everything I do, I try to put music, because that's what music is anyway, and music is just people's interpretation of something they've already heard. And the more you try and cover that up, then I guess the more you're kind of going against what you really like. So you try, I really love certain bass lines in Jamaican music, and in Jamaica there's no copyright on bass lines. There's slang tang rhythm, which is that bass line, that's been recorded like 2,500 times in Jamaica alone. Different record labels, different artists, no one's ever paid a cent to anyone for it. That's just in Jamaica. I've ripped that bass line off. That's on the Fairy album. And it's all about recycling. Music is all about recycling and just putting your own spin on it. Don't reinvent the wheel, add to it. Right?